All right. Hi guys, it's Alan. It's September the 10th and 2021. It's Friday. Well, it's Friday, yeah. And I put as a title for us as targeted individuals. And it's a weird title, but it's like if you can go back in time, a lot of things when you're a TI and you're going through the whole process. People have different symptoms, different scenarios. If you could go back in time, when you're a kid, you think of this in your little fantasy world as a kid. You go through this little fantasy. If I could go back in time and warn people about Hitler or something. Let me go get something real quick. If I could go back in time, I could warn. It's like go back in time and warn people about Hitler or something. Warn people about this thing happening, that thing, this group of people or that event happening. Making it, and when you're a target individual, there is that feeling, that wish to get the word out. It's almost the same thing. It's not just warning people about one person or an evil empire like the Nazis. This is about a stage of persecution that is upon the world. When you're a target individual, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's synthetic telepathy. It's reading the mind, and to have our own government use a very confidential technology that Dr. Robert Duncan, one of the makers of this technology, but he didn't know it at the time. Evidently, it was all compartmentalized, and a lot of the scientists and doctors, they had their own field that they could branch out and work on this aspect and that aspect. Other doctors or scientists over here, like Russell Targ, and he had a book, and one of the chapters was making an ESP machine. Now, they can make the machine, but not realize that the government could use that machine into a torture device like synthetic telepathy and voice to skull. And they could use this for wonderful things. A lot of the very scientists that make it into a wonderful thing, but somebody else says, let's see if we can screw with people and get money off their death somehow. Experiment on people. And Bill Clinton in 1995 admitted that our government did this to people. You can Google this and find this on YouTube. Just Google Bill Clinton's apology 1995 for experimentation. And so all these years of these otherwise American citizens who did nothing wrong, they were complaining of the government's looking or spying on me or messing with me, and people, forget you. You don't know what you're talking about. And they never had anybody authenticate their experience. They were just looked at as being dumb, crazy. And our own government did it to them. Our own government. But they waited till most of them were dead and gone and couldn't financially pay these people back financially. They could just pretend that they were sorry, and we're so sorry. And if you're, people who go through it should be compensated and should get money. That way, the one thing that the United States has tried to project upon the world is the idea of a moral guidance, as a Christian nation for people who if you're raised evangelical like myself. The idea that it's inherent, it's believed and felt very strongly along with its patriotism. But when you realize, no, they screw with people, they F with people all the time, even to the point where they will torture a person or group of people, and just to see the results of radiation, even on children, the polonium girls, using radioactive oatmeal, and having girls and children take this oatmeal and ingest it just to see what the effects would be. And that is America, the United States. This is not the 1970s Taliban. This is not some Saudi Arabian head chopping off. This is the United States at the beginning of the moral majority in the 1980s. Well, the Radium Girls is like in the 30s, I think, or 40s from Iowa. But they were doing this stuff all the way through. But Bill Clinton finally, you can find this, you can look this up. He apologized, and a big binder of it, but acting like it's done. We admitted it. We're not going to do this anymore. It was horrible, and we know better now. But when you're a targeted individual, you realize, no, they aren't done with it. That's like a PR thing to make people think that it's done, and they're still doing it. For my case, I had these for 30 years. It started around, I broke my arm, 86, 87, and a few months after that, I started getting these little sharp jolts in my chest area, and I had no idea what it was. Just that it was painful. So I figured, well, maybe it's stress or something. You don't think it's the government trying to mess with you, or you don't think that at all. You just think, well, maybe, you don't know what it is, maybe stress or something, and that can be. But I just get this repeated, and so what do? You go see your doctor, and you certainly expect that the doctor, well, they won't know everything, but they'll try and be sincere in trying. But you certainly don't think at all, well, I'm being used as a test subject by our government just for pain, and and it wasn't until in 2016 I had gone through this pain thing and actually got medication for pain, which I'm thankful my doctors did that. But it wasn't until 2015, 2016 when they were experimenting with V2K and doing that, the whispering through the walls, the whispering underneath and you're looking like, what is this? Somebody's effing with me. And you don't know who, and you don't know why, because I had never heard anybody. And I think a lot of TIs have that. They're like, who did I piss off? And it's like, I didn't do anything wrong to anybody. Why would anybody? And then one thing good about it is, like, at least it answered the question of why I had pain for all these years. And that's where I realized a lot of these target individuals are people that suffer from what is known in the community as directed energy weapons, DEWs, DEWS. And so, get that fixed, I guess. Anyway, these DEWs, I don't know if that's too much light. These DEWs, they are directed energy weapons, radio, microwave radiation, satellite. I just can't figure this light thing out. I could never figure that out. Microwave radiation and satellite, they can make it to where it just like a pulsating, I won't say like, well, laser, whatever, but this just a pulsating boom, when you're a teenager going through this feels like what you imagine a heart attack would feel like. This is what, as a teenager, what you would imagine a heart attack would feel like. You know that you're too young, 15, 16, to have a heart attack. But when you're a kid, that's what you imagine, and you just know you're feeling it. So you go to your doctors, and hopefully they explain, they send you to specialists, they put you on pain meds. And you're thankful because at least you don't know what caused it. They gave you something at least but it was happening so much, times every week, for years. And it would just double over. You feel that thing and you just double over in pain. And then it would subside after a few minutes. And this was literally since, 16 years old, 16 and 15, 16, 17. I just remember as a sophomore, broke my arm, and then they fixed it. Everything was good with my arm. That was the place that was hurt. But then a few months after, it started happening. And you don't know what happened you just know for whatever reason it happened, and it was hurting a lot. And anyway, they sent you to specialists. But in 2016, over 30 years of this stuff, 35 years, and then suddenly this V2K, this whispering through the walls and through this, why doesn't he come down here? It's two voices, a lady and a guy, sound like my neighbors. Why doesn't he come down here? He knows we're talking about him. He knows it. He can hear us. But even then, you could tell the voices wasn't strong enough. You could hear it, but it was faint, and it's hard to explain, but you could just tell it was like you could hear it, but it's in some way faint to where a regular recorder doesn't seem. I didn't try it, but it just seemed like it wouldn't be loud enough to hear it. And you're thinking, I got along with my neighbors. Wasn't friends with them, but it wasn't enemies or anything. And but if I went downstairs to, hey, what's up? Then it was their garage, so I would have been breaking and entering. Anyway, and then I ended up getting genuinely hurt, which genuinely, to the point where I fell out of a window and had to learn to walk again. And like I say, I never got in trouble. I didn't have any enemies literally my entire life. I was most friendliest as a guy from my high school, class of 89 in Dallas. As a guy, there's a gal and a guy, and I was most friendliest and most likely to be teaching scientific creation or something like that. But they still, so I didn't have enemies. I was very self-aware to not just, I didn't want to hurt anybody or hurt their feelings. If I ever did, then I would be the first to just apologize. And, but that's when, after getting voice to skull, and I didn't know the name for it, I just knew somebody was fucking with me, and with his voice. But I didn't know there was a group of people called targeted individuals. And that's now what I am after all this studying and research. And thank God for Ella Free and going and Dr. Matt Arnegard and the group in Portland at the rally. And I got to feel, and it explains all those years of waiting and wanting to know what the side pain was and to have an answer. And then to realize all these very religious people in Dallas, and Salem even, that were talking about draining the swamp. They're, against all that government corruption, and, they're for ethics and family values and all this. And they want to drain the government swamp. And it's like, no, they don't. Because that would mean they have to admit and maybe give up some of their money, the targeted individual money, and their non-disclosure agreements that they signed. I mean, if they wanted to, they could get along with the other sheriff's departments and the other governments, the other city halls, and say, what we are opening the door for is a technology and a program that is so fundamentally evil that the people of our town will wonder, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you do something? We put you in charge to do this, to be, to protect. And what are you going to say? Well, we got money for a program 30 years ago, and we kept that money, and it would be too embarrassing for us to admit it. It would hurt our personal feelings. So we can't admit it. And we signed a non-disclosure agreement on a piece of paper. So if it means exposing and opening the door for having the government read our thoughts and torture us with direct energy, or what is in the news called Havana syndrome. There's so many hundreds, if not thousands of us in not just the United States, but in the world right now. In Germany, in 2021, just a couple of weeks ago, this year, they held a thing in front of 10 Downing Street. You can look it up. 10 Downing Street. 10 Downing Street, and they had a target individual protest. But they're not opening the door, whether they only a few of them know the whole details, I don't know. But I know a lot of them know a lot, some of the details enough to know that this is a wrong, evil system. And the ones that do know are going to have to wonder, why didn't we voice the concern? If we could go back in time like the people, what would, if Hitler's around? The only thing is, we all think we'd instantly run around and go start yelling at the top of our heads, like on a TV show. The government's doing this. They're reading our thoughts. They're scaring the shit. They're using microwave radiation to pulse it. If we start yelling this, then we are looking like the very crazy people that they are paid to make us look like. It's a program. This is how they're supposed to follow it. And they're not allowed to, or they could take maybe who knows, they'll say, well, they could take my license or a doctor's license or law enforcement, this and that, or it'll help hurt other people. But this, it's weird because they're torturing us, but we're the ones that can warn the people. But if we do warn the people in a way, we can't be screaming or breaking, the peace. Like yelling out in front of people, because we'll look crazy and then they'll arrest us. But we got to do something. And thank God for people like Dr. Matt and Ella Free and just the other ones that go online and actually do outdoor rallies. Thank God for them, because the ones that do outdoor rallies and get the word out, and internet stuff, the ones who do the internet stuff, and let people know about it, and hopefully don't go on and start attacking all the other TIs, because just because they have different TI stuff or different symptoms, or maybe didn't answer your quote or your text in time, I mean, they're still probably TIs. But let's not start attacking the ones that have raised awareness and got the word out. And that's why I'm thankful for the people like Targeted Justice, Ella Free, Dr. Matt, all these groups. There's quite a few of them in Dallas, not Dallas, but Europe. ICATOR and ICAT, ICAACT, PAX International. There's just Targeted in Massachusetts. There's a Karen Hort. There's a pretty good Ramola D. But for those of us, and it's like we're in one of those moments where it's kind of like, if you can go back in time and harm Hitler, it's like the best way is to try to raise awareness without looking like a kook. And the worst part is, where would you go? Where do you go for help? You think, well, you go to the police. Well, it's part of the sheriff. It's military technology that is handed down to law enforcement to try out on its everyday people. And I don't know how much money they get for these federal programs. I don't know. It was when in 2011 and 2012, and you can see this online in 2012, Targeted Individual Evidence on YouTube, and I think James Lico, Lico, he's a TI in Oregon. And it has the 2011 and 2012 Targeted Individual Bioethics White House Symposium. The White House had to open its own doors and listen to TIs, because there's so many of us that they had to pretend to make it look like they were going to do something and help us. So anyway, look those up, and I'll try to write, and we'll try to help get the word out, okay? All right, this is Alan, and I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, bye.